Welcome to the third lecture, Module 3. This lecture is focused on badging in virtual education. As you know, badging is a key component often to gamifying or using game-based learning approaches in your virtual classes or in any classes at all. And so we wanted to make sure we covered the use of badging in respect to supporting game approaches or just even general teaching strategies in your virtual classes. We're going to discuss the role of badging in this lecture, and then we're also going to identify some resources for you to go try to implement badging in your classes if you wish. I do encourage you to take a look at the resource sheet because it does list a great source for getting more information on one of the initiatives that I'm going to talk about in just a second, as well as finding other ways and useful tools for helping you to implement badging in your classes. So badging, we're kind of familiar with what a badge looks like. I took these from Commendable Kids. It's actually a website where kids can go in and participate in different kinds of activities, most of them social or community-driven activities, and then receive badges that they can go post on any of their virtual networks that they're participating in, or even post in their profiles, or print up and hang on their walls at home. So what is digital badging? Digital badging provides students, or it really provides an individual earning that badge with an opportunity to virtually display the recognition of the completion of something, or the acquisition of a specific skill, or even the participation in a community-based or social-based project. This virtual display is often shared with others. We like to put badging on profiles. We like to include badges in our pictures or any information or on our websites that we're talking about ourselves. Badging comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes. In fact, I would argue that although Coursera provides certificates, those certificates are similar to a badge, because now it's interesting, Coursera just recently announced that it's partnership with LinkedIn, where you can actually have your certificates linked to your LinkedIn profiles. So that's a really interesting approach, and it's almost like a badge. Not quite the same thing as a visual representation of that badge, but it is the recognition of either a set of skills or the completion of something, depending on the course that you're taking. And that's the kind of thing, once again, we want to share publicly or socially. Now, badges don't always have to be public or social, but oftentimes, especially when they're used in a game-based scenario, that's part of the intrinsic value of a badge. Now, a little bit of history. Where did badging come from, particularly in use in education? In the U.S., patches were called badges and were used in the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts for quite a long time. In fact, they were put in a very visual display on a sash that the Boy Scout or Girl Scout would wear, and there was this sense of accomplishment, and you could get badges for building a skill or completing a task or participating in one of those community-based or social-based activities. Well, that's evolved, and it evolved into levels in video games. Quite often you'll hear very serious video gamers talk about what level are they in the game, and that's a badge of honor. And actually the level will show when you're playing other games and in multiplayer games, the level will also often show next to that person, similar to a badge. Well, so leveling came, and then we saw achievement recognition in video games. So not only would you level and you had this honor of what level were you, but then you could also receive badges or little awards or tokens as you are progressing through a particular game, or as you do different things in a game. I know I participate in a number of social networks that use badges as a way to show that I've accomplished something or I've done something in particular in contribution to my community. Now, that achievement recognition in video games rolled into now the implementation of digital badging in gamified situations. Businesses are using badges as a way to show how consumers are earning certain recognitions for doing either building a skill or doing something or participating in something. And you're seeing it in social networking. As I mentioned, I have a number of social networks that utilize badges as well. And then most recently, Over the last couple of years, Mozilla has announced and supported an open badge initiative, and this is with a number of other foundations, grant support, and other even research institutions are supporting this open badge initiative. And what this open badge initiative does is it's created a badging platform or a badging technology that can be integrated into lots of other systems. Your learning management system or virtual learning environment that you may be using. It can be integrated into a game that you may be using. It can be integrated into, hopefully, eventually a MOOC environment. Actually, I'm experimenting right now with another MOOC environment other than Coursera called the Canvas Network. And in that environment, we implemented this open badge system so that students could earn badges as they worked through modules, in addition to a certificate at the end of the course. So this open badge initiative, the idea is that it's to bring badging to education as a way to help students be socially recognized of accomplishments, and to encourage some of this skill-based approach to education while still bringing in a gamification or a fun aspect to learning. It's also focused on helping students progress through work or helping students build some real-world skills by introducing badges as they're progressing through things that they acquire or build or develop themselves. They're able to then not only feel gratified that they're collecting these badges and these awards, but they're able to display that and their talents to others, particularly as they continue on in their education. Badges are also very collection-oriented. I've said this a couple of times, and quite often you'll find kids drawn towards collecting things. Whether it be, certain kinds of toys, it could be cars, it could be I collected stuffed animals as a kid, but there's something about this sense of accomplishment of building a collection. And I don't know all of the psychology behind that, so I'm not going to take it too much further, but there is something that's relatable or engaging or fun for us. And the nice thing about badging is it can feed into that collection desire. And then finally, we've said this over and over again, but badging can just be fun depending on what the badges look like and how they're used. In fact, for those of you that have now listened to this part of the lecture, you will be receiving a badge, or actually you can choose between two different badges. They're just very simple PDF little images that you can use and post anywhere you want. Those will be available at the end of this week's lectures. And I'm just going to post them up, and you're welcome to go grab them. You'll now know about them. I'm not going to tell anybody else about them, but you'll now know about them by having listened to this part of the lecture. Now, part of this idea of using badges is that there's some real value in their authenticity or in their ability to help students and really help education systems show more authentic signs of knowledge as opposed to a test, a standardized test, a grade. Badges can be then related to some very authentic learning experiences. I think it'll be really interesting to see in the US how they're incorporated into the Common Core implementation now that's happening across the US. There could be some really nice alignment there because the focus of the Common Core is to also be developing these authentic skills, these interdisciplinary skills, and perhaps badges can be a way to award recognition of that. But the New Media Center in their 2013 Horizon Report, which I shared with you in the very first week of this class, so you can go back in and reference this, talks about how they can be a more authentic way to show students are building skills or knowledge than some of the other opportunities out there. Now, this is just a possibility. This is a potential value of badges. There are some challenges, though, with implementing badges. One is the distribution of them can be just challenging and time-consuming, right? It's without having very easy and simple systems to just make a badge and distribute a badge based on particular activities and completion of those activities. You have to sometimes manually orchestrate the distribution of badges, even the creation of badges. And that can be time-consuming. Like I said, the Mozilla Open Badge Initiative is bringing that in and incorporating that into a lot of educational technologies, this use of badging. But that comes with time, that comes with the need of technical expertise at your schools or districts or institutions, and that brings other challenges. So just for the everyday teacher that wants to do this on their own, once again, this manual management of badges can be time-consuming. And there's limited integration with the everyday technology that the teacher uses. Quite often that integration of open badge systems has to come at the system level or the platform level of the technology you might be using, so it becomes harder to integrate some of these opportunities, although we're seeing new ways to do this emerging every day. I do think 2 years from now it'll be much different than it is today. So just keeping on top of the Open Badge Initiative and how it's becoming more pervasive in education. In fact, one of the links on your resource sheet this week is to that initiative and a wiki supporting that initiative so that you can stay in touch with what's happening with the Mozilla Open Badges. One of the other challenges is badges aren't necessarily aligned yet with some other incentives or other drivers for students to want to accomplish or complete things. So while they can be possibly a more authentic way to display the acquisition of knowledge or skills, as the New Media Center's Horizon Report discusses, they aren't yet recognized in a lot of college applications, for example, or they're not necessarily recognized on job applications yet, although you're seeing that change. Companies like Google recognize it. There's discussion out there about how do you bring in all of these alternative learning opportunities or competency-based learning opportunities and the badges associated with them into what you're looking for in an employee. So I think as the world changes, we'll see education adopt badging more and more. Yet there's not a whole lot of alignment yet in things outside of education for how these badges may have value, other than just the intrinsic value and the personal value and the fun associated with earning and collecting the badges. So now that you know a little bit about badges, and once again I encourage you to explore the resources on the resource sheet this week, let's give you a little bit of a question here to reflect on in thinking about how you might want to use badging. So I'm trying to more visibly and visually recognize my students' success, and I kind of want to motivate them through this very visual recognition. I thought I would try out some badging activities. So what would be the simplest and easiest way for me to do this? I've identified a couple of activities. I want to be able to have students earn badges in the completion of those activities and do some assessments and earn sort of a collective badge. How could I do this? What would be some simple ways for me to do this? And how could I do this in such a way that I could then show my school or district how successful it was so that I could get them to possibly invest in a broader implementation of badging and maybe even some technology to help support badging, because my approach is going to have to be my own manual approach to start. What do you think are some of the technologies or initiatives my school should perhaps investigate once I show them how successful the badging experiment is in my class? So while you think about that, you can also prepare yourself to go pick up those badges at the end of this week's lectures, and you can prepare yourself for the very last lecture, which is a short lecture on 2 new types of technology that some of your classmates asked me to incorporate, and that's augmented reality and QR codes.